Welcome to the Soccer Chaplains United podcast, From the Touchline. And now, here's your host, Rev Brad.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast today. Well, here we are in the beginning of the month of December. And for me, this is an important time. The off season is a time of rest, but it's also a time of gearing up and getting ready for next year, next season, making sure that, especially for my own position with being the volunteer chaplain for the Colorado Rapids and leading the ministry of Soccer Chaplains United, that I do the work to make sure that our funding for next year is in a good position and that we're ready to go. And next year becomes a really vital year with the World Cup coming to North America. If you didn't know, the World Cup will be in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. for 2026. So there's plenty of soccer and football opportunities to be had. Well, during this time of year as well, the early part of December is usually we see National Giving Tuesday. Usually happens the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, so sometimes I think it lands mainly in December. Sometimes it can land in November, I imagine. But and also next week, Tuesday, is Colorado Gives Day. Now, why don't they have these two giving days on the same day? I don't know. I think Colorado Gives says, hey, we were here first, and National Giving Tuesday in the U.S. is just a big day. But today on the podcast, what I want to talk about is financial support. And it's a pretty important thing to talk about, even though I don't like to talk about it. I don't like to talk about it for a couple of reasons. I'll get into them today. But I've learned in doing this, being in this role and in this position for the last 10 years, coming away from paid church staff position, that my work as a volunteer chaplain, my work in leading the ministry of Soccer Chaplains United is heavily, heavily dependent upon others. Really dependent upon God, but dependent on others to come alongside and support the work that I do. So I want to run down just quickly today on the pod a sort of a case, and maybe you're a supporter, you're a contributor, and I want to say first to you, thank you. We're trying to make many of these phone calls in person to say thank you, and thanks for your gifts and your giving, and during this time of year, I'm really thankful for you. And I try to get around to as many of my friends and people that are supporting the work and the ministry that's going on. Maybe you haven't given, you don't give, but regardless of your position, I think today could be important for you because, one, I want to lay out sort of a biblical foundation and a precedent for why do we support this kind of work? Why do we support missional work, missional endeavors that happen outside of the walls of our church buildings? The second thing that I want to do is I want to kind of be transparent with you. I want to tell you, here is kind of the structure that I have in place over me, the authority, the figures that come alongside of me in my board of directors and the things that they govern, they oversee, they watch, they look for, the ways that they help. And then I want to just give you an opportunity. I want to give you a way to support. So those three things, but let me dive in first by talking about a biblical foundation, a biblical precedent. It's not unprecedented that there's often work that happens outside of what we might term as the local church. The local church is the building you see on the corner. It's the preacher that preaches inside and maybe the others that help to steward the resource, the facilities, whatever the ministry that it tends to be localized. Maybe it's opening up their own food pantry. Maybe it's working with the homeless in the area, supporting church members, doing baptisms. All those things tend to be the ministry of the local church. When you get into my role as a volunteer chaplain, working in a secular organization, institution, even albeit pro sports, there isn't the same kind of look to that. And so there's more of a development work. There's more of a support, encouragement work. There's also, for me and for many of our chaplains, there's a way of encouraging, pushing, connecting people back into local church ministry and local church. So what I want to do in the biblical precedent portion here is to share with you a little bit of the story of the Apostle Paul, because Paul's work was really to build up the church, to grow new churches and new places. And so he was moving around quite a bit. And sometimes he'd need to ask a church, hey, can you help support my travel, support the income that I need to kind of live and exist, and to go around and build up churches in these other areas. And so I don't want to equate my work on the same par or level with the Apostle Paul. I'm not building up local churches, but I am doing the work, and Soccer Chaplains United is doing the work to raise up chaplains within soccer organizations, teams, institutions, whatever word or language you want to use. That takes time. It takes time to find a local pastor who has the time, the energy, maybe even the finances to take on. And so in a lot of ways, we're doing not church planting, but sometimes I call it chaplain planting, and we're doing that kind of work. I want to read for you, though, from Philippians 4, verses 10 through 20. This is Paul kind of wrapping up his letter to the colony of Philippi. I mentioned this last week. I mentioned that he had some thankfulness for the people of Philippi being partners in the work of the gospel with him. But now I want to share a little bit more about his thankfulness and his appreciation to the people at Philippi who were supporting him. So Philippians 4:10, I'm reading in the NIV. Paul writes, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. Yet it was good of you to share in my troubles. Moreover, as you Philippians know, in the early days of your acquaintance with the gospel, when I set out forth from Macedonia, not one church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving, except you only. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent me aid again and again when I was in need. Not that I'm looking for a gift, but I am looking for what may be credited to your account. I have received full payment and even more. I am amply supplied now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent. They are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice pleasing to God. And my God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. To our God and Father be glory forever and ever. Amen. Those are the words of Paul. He finishes up the letter with some final greetings, but at least for this portion, what I want to kind of highlight for you is that there have been different points in Paul's ministry when the church at Philippi really came to bat. Now, Philippi was a prosperous colony. There were many retirees there, and their hearts were led by Paul, and in the work that he did in and amongst them, and then in the work that they empowered him to do for others, the church at Philippi stood out as an example, and Paul writes to this effect. He mentions these things. In fact, he even says, like, hey, even now, I'm not writing for a gift. I'm not looking for anything because I don't have really a need at this point, but I just have to say thank you because the work, the gifts that you have done, and I've just received a new gift that they sent via Epaphroditus. Man, it's been such a blessing to me. And his prayer back to them is that, hey, look, I just know God's going to supply the needs you have. And some of those needs we can understand from the text and understand from study of this passage that they're not exactly physical all the time. Sometimes they're a spiritual gift. They're a spiritual blessing that comes. And so I just want to share a little bit of my own story. You know, as I stepped away from church staff in 2015, and I say stepped away, there's more to that story, but not to be shared here. But coming away from church staff was a challenge for me and my family. We had to find our own insurance. We had to understand what was the work that we were called to. Were we called to go back into maybe to a different church ministry? And I had a board and a group of people around me that helped me discern in 2015 that God might be giving finally this opportunity that I had longed for many years. For about 10 years, I had longed to do the work of serving the Rapids as chaplain more fully, and also raising up and growing other chaplains connected into, at the time the ministry wasn't called Soccer Chaplains United, but that's what it's become today. And so I just remember in the June of that year, I had come off church staff late May, and 2 weeks later at a board retreat for the ministry was this really intentional time of prayer. There were some tears. There was some uncertainty. There still is uncertainty today. But the question was, Lord, is this really what you're going to allow me to do, the way that you're going to allow me to serve? And there was a affirmation from many different levels. There was an affirmation from the board of directors at the time of the ministry. There was affirmations from mentors of mine who knew my story very intimately. They knew the pain, the difficulty, the burden, the calling, and they spoke into these things as well. There was maybe a little bit of, hey, let's wait and see from my wife. But there was sort of this encouragement, like, okay, let's move forward. Let's see, is this what God has for us? And so there was that leading in, and I saw it on many different levels. And in doing so, several of the people at the church that I had served, and again, many of them were retirees. Many of them were people who, they had more means and more resources. I kind of liken them here to the church, the people of Philippi, because they said, Brad, what next? And it wasn't going to be a church ministry where the church itself would support my family and give me a salary and give me the benefits, the health benefits and other things that come with those things. It was going to be this work of stepping out in faith and going missionally into this role that I had done for years. I had done it for, started in 2002 all the way up to 2015. So for all those years, I had done a little bit of this work, but my income had always been fairly consistent with the job as a hospice chaplain, as a pastor at a mega church, care pastor. Those things were supplied for me. So I could feel, I didn't have as much time to spend into the team. I didn't have as much time to grow and develop other chaplains. I tried doing those things in the time that I had. I tried bringing others along, but now it was sort of moving into this fullness. And so others got behind that. They saw the vision. They supported. I remember sitting with one special woman. I'll never forget her. And I had done a funeral service for her husband. And as we sat, and I explained to her the work that I felt called by God to do, and she said, I want to support this work. And, I said, oh, that would be such a blessing. And I thought, maybe she'll give, $50 a month. Maybe she'll give maybe a little bit more than that. But, she told me the number to put down, and it was a 4-digit number. It wasn't a 2-digit or 3-digit number. And I thought monthly, wow, like, God, is this how we're going to do this? It was a real blessing to me. Now, some people come to me and first you're the chaplain for the Rapids. And I've tried to be more careful in recent years that I'm the volunteer chaplain for the Rapids. I think some people think I'm paid by the team. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in pro sports. I think that there are some NFL chaplains who may receive some income from their teams, but it's a rare thing that a chaplain in sport anywhere in the world is paid by their team. It's really a volunteer kind of thing. It's very sacrificial, I'll say. And the same is true for me and for my family. I've been the volunteer chaplain for the Rapids since 2002. Now that comes with some blessing and some challenge. The blessing is that the club, the ownership, the leadership don't have control over me in the sense of confidentiality of the people I meet with, the ways that I serve the club. Yes, I report those things as a matter of accountability and professionalism, but I'm a guest, and at any moment, someone could come in authority and say, thank you, but we're finished. And so there's a lot of trust that God keeps the door open for me and for my team at Colorado Rapids. In addition, there's a lot of trust that God will open other doors with other teams because we're all guests. We're all volunteers. None of us are employees. None of us are on staff, paid staff with these teams. Sometimes we get credentials. Sometimes we wear team gear, and it can make us look like staff. Yes, we want to be in the trenches with people, even to that level. But the truth is, we're guests, and we depend on God's sovereignty, His authority to keep us in these places. Now, some will ask, well, hey, why not just ask the owners? There's been owners throughout the years that are Christian or favorable to chaplaincy, maybe. Why not just ask the coaches? There have been coaches that are favorable, open to chaplaincy, open to Christianity. Well, why not the players? There are plenty of players who are Christians who would support your work. And the main reason that I would share that with you is pastoral integrity. Pastoral integrity. So these are the people that we, as chaplains of Soccer Chaplains United, we come to serve. The ownership, the leadership, the players, the coaches. We come to serve them and not to ask anything of them. And there are many times that Paul talks about this, even in his own letters. He says, look, I came to you and I asked nothing of you. I simply put the gospel in front of you. I simply cared for you and loved you. And that's the same approach that we believe. That's part of our policy with Soccer Chaplains United. We don't allow our chaplains to ask athletes for funding, for support. We will receive. So if Lionel Messi came to me tomorrow and said, hey, Rev Brad, I'd love to support you and the work, he wouldn't do that, but of Soccer Chaplains United, and I'd like to give $1,000 this year, we would receive that. We would say, thank you, Lionel Messi. We know Lionel Messi could probably do more, but we wouldn't ask for more, and we would just simply say thank you, because the gift that he gives demonstrates maybe the belief or the impact or whatever it is, however he's been led by God. So we want to maintain the pastoral integrity to be able to speak into people's lives, to be able to serve them. And I would say, even just, here's a little personal side note. It's really hard for me to even speak to some of the people that I serve about my situation. When I walk into a locker room and I know that the bank account is low in the ministry, and I realize that maybe I have a month of salary that might get paid out. If I have a glum face, that's not what I need to bring into that environment. I really need to be there to pastorally shepherd and support the athletes, the coaches, and again, the staff that I serve. Some of the staff that I serve don't make as much money as I do. They're living in Denver, Colorado, maybe as a single person. Maybe they're sharing some housing with other co-workers just to make ends meet. Their income is not great. Now, I could come back and say, I'm supporting a family of 6 on my income, also trying to live in Denver and afford it. But that's not the environment, and that's not the way that God has asked us to reach out and get the funding and support that we need. So let me transition a little bit and talk about the structure of funding and fundraising. So our budget for Soccer Chaplains United, it's grown over the years. We have a couple of chaplains who raise money, and we offer that. We offer chaplains to raise a stipend or to cover their expenditures for the ministry that they do. And at different points, we've had a number of chaplains raising, and then it's kind of a flexible thing. Some chaplains don't need to raise money. Maybe their church says, hey, use our church, some of our church budget for this, and they have oversight to those things. I have oversight to the budget that I propose. I have a board of directors. Usually that ranges between 7 to 9 different people. In that, we agree that here is the funding that we will raise for the upcoming year. And as it goes, I raise my hand to raise 80%. That 80% usually covers my salary and a certain percentage of our operating costs into our general budget. Our board of directors agree, by virtue of being a team of the 7 to 9 of them, they agree to raise or contribute 20% of our budget. Our budget lands anywhere between $150K to $175K. I'm just being really vulnerable here. And I'll tell you, you can go onto our website. Actually, you're going to have to click this in. You're going to have to type this in, soccerchaplainsunited.org /prospectus. And we've got sort of our annual prospectus is up in that if you just type that in. And you'll see our numbers. You'll see our numbers from 2024, our goal, our budget for 2025. And you'll see the breakdown of where our funding comes from, which I think is pretty cool myself. I didn't start thinking that it would be this way, but we currently have about 60% of our income comes from individual donors. So very much like my dear friend who gave so many years ago and said, I want to support you at this 4-digit monthly number. That was amazing. Now, givers come and go. It takes a lot of $50 a month gifts. It takes a lot of $100 a month gifts. And we have some people that give very generously to us. But of that giving, about 60% of it come from individuals. Our board usually hits that 17 to 20% goal. There's been some years it's been a down year. Maybe a bonus didn't come through for a board member, or maybe they made an ask and people were like, Brad, who? Soccer Chaplains United, what? And it can be tough, I think, sometimes in this day and age to ask for gifts and giving to the work that we're doing. We also have church partnerships. And the church partnerships are really great because we love to support them with soccer gear that we get for their mission trips and endeavors. But we usually see church partnerships give about 15% of our income. And then the rest of it comes down to we've got some donor-advised funding or some tax-advantaged giving that happens. And we've got, we ask our chaplains to be invested themselves into the ministry. Some of them contribute monthly. Some of them just pay an annual membership fee. That kind of covers it gets at covering some of our insurance costs and our different logistical things that we need as a ministry to survive. So again, check out soccerchaplainsunited.org /prospectus, and you'll see we're pretty transparent with sort of our revenues, our people, and some of the other projects and things that we do. And for me, what's been important is to have a level and layer of accountability, because we know there's a lot of church leaders out there today that misappropriate funds. And so, during this month of December becomes a really critical time. We usually see 30% of our annual budget, our annual income comes in during the months of November, December, and that'll vary and fluctuate with different things. And I would just say, again, if you're a donor, thank you. Thank you for supporting. And maybe, as you know, for those of you living in Colorado, it's gotten really expensive to live here. And maybe in the same way that you get a bump or a little bit of an increase year to year for a cost of living, maybe you might consider, maybe there's a gift you haven't touched for a long time or a period of time, and you might say, can I give a little bit extra? that would be great to consider us, to pray about that. Let me talk, maybe you've never given. Maybe you're listening to this podcast and you're in a different place. Maybe you're in a different part of the world and you're saying, hey, Reb Brad, I've listened to you for a while. I do my own chaplaincy and I need my own support. I would just encourage you. I think that there's some great lessons from Scripture, from Philippians. I think that there is certainly there's an annual, if not monthly, sometimes a weekly leap of faith that has to be had in raising support, raising funds. For us next year, one of our goals is to raise up chaplains in Liga MX. My knowledge and ideas around the kinds of chaplains that we need in Mexico, I don't think that they're going to have the same abilities to raise money, to raise support. I imagine that I will need to ask more of my friends here in the U.S. to support that work, to support the chaplain in Mexico who maybe is a pastor working several jobs to make ends meet for his own family, to not burden the church, and then to do the work of serving as a chaplain for these teams. I just imagine they will need a little bit of help from their friends north of the border. And how can we do that? How can we grow the kingdom of God and come alongside the work that he's doing? That's where I think Paul gets to the church at Philippi and says, hey, what a great thing you've done. You've not just internalized this to yourselves. You've not just kept back the gift for yourself and to grow your own mega church or influence. You're helping grow it in other parts of the world. And you're seeing and believing in me and the work that God's using me for. I want to say that to my friends who have given. If you've not given, there's some different ways to support. On our website, soccerchaplainsunited.org, there's a menu button that says donate, and then it tells you some different ways. PushPay is one of our key, more convenient ways of giving because they take credit card or debit card, or you can even set up your a gift to be taken out of a checking or savings account. And they have different fees associated with that. We all explain that on the donate page there. Next Tuesday, December 9th, is Colorado Gives Day. That's a day for us where, we're using sort of this outside group, this outside moment and movement to create generosity. Sometimes we've gotten a really big gift from someone we don't even know. Like, how do they even know us? It's been a blessing for us. So we participate in Colorado Gives Day. And I would just say if you're in Colorado, you don't have to be in Colorado to participate in that day. But if you'd like to give, we're trying to get our gifts focused in the 10 to 11 p.m. Mountain Time hour. There's a certain hours where if you're the top raising nonprofit group in that hour, they'll kick in a bonus couple $1,000s for your group. And we think we've recently been moved up into the medium nonprofit group. We're just hitting that lower end of the median nonprofit group with our budget, but we just would encourage you, maybe participate. There's a little bit of incentive that happens for people that give during Colorado Gives Day. I would say, honestly, it doesn't amount to much for what we raise. I mean, maybe we get an extra $100, and maybe you just go, maybe it's just easier for me to give you $100. It doesn't really matter. Of course, the most cost-effective way, but maybe not the safest way to give these days, is to just send a check. And again, all that information's on the donate page. And I just encourage you, if you feel led, if you want to get behind the chaplaincy work that's going on in soccer, if you want to get behind Soccer Chaplains United, and we're one of a couple different groups that are doing this. We do it in a different way. We have a different philosophy of ministry and even fundraising strategies. There's no big banquet dinner we're going to invite you to. There's no table that we're going to ask you to fill. Sometimes we'll host a watch party. We'll probably do that next year. We'll have a watch party somewhere, and maybe use that as a time to say, hey, maybe you want to join our team. Maybe you want to get behind us. Maybe for you, you're like, hey, you know what? I don't really have the extra income, or I don't feel really called and led to give financially. maybe you just want to travel with us a little bit more, get to know us. You can sign up for our email newsletter. Send an email to info@soccerchaplainsunited.org. Send that email to us, and we'll get you signed up on an email newsletter list and just kind of keep you informed on the work and the ministry we're doing. I think, just some other little tidbits for you. It costs us about $3,000 to raise up a new chaplain. And every year I'm looking up at my board right now. I've got 8 teams that we're looking to place a chaplain with. So that tells you about how much it costs, and the work that we're doing, the work I'm doing when I'm not around the Rapids and around the team, is really looking to raise up those chaplains with other teams. And then to support the chaplains that we currently have, we have about 28 chaplains. That number's gone down a little bit this year as some chaplains have felt more deeply called into church ministry. Some have needed to step away. Some, their teams have folded and they've just said, look, there's not really work for me to do. I'm just going to step back from Soccer Chaplains United. But to support the chaplains we have, it costs us. It costs us about $750 annually to support a chaplain. So, maybe one of those numbers helps you kind of identify and know, hey, there is a cost to doing this work. There is a cost to being a volunteer in the space, and it might seem fun, it might seem great, sexy, whatever language word you might use. To be a soccer chaplain, a sports chaplain might seem a really cool thing, but I can tell you, our people make great sacrifices to do the work, to serve the people. And sometimes without very much praise or acclamation, we often work in the background. And so I just want to encourage you. There's a way. There's a way for you to partner with us, and I just encourage you to do it. Support us today. If you're the person that's like, hey, I want to do this more quickly, I don't want to go to your website, that push pay, if you just text Soccer Chaplains, all one word, and hopefully you all know how to spell chaplain, CHAPLAINS. Soccer Chaplains. Text Soccer Chaplains to 77977. That's Soccer Chaplains to 77977. You'll have a link there, and you'll see the different funds. The general fund is generally what affects me and the general operating costs of the organization. Our Portland chaplain is on there. Our chaplain in Colorado Springs, our Chattanooga chaplain is raising money. We have a fund for our community project work that we do. So maybe something in there has grabbed your heartstrings. Maybe in this conversation today, there's a space where you feel like, yeah, you know what? I would like to give, and give in the season. We would so greatly appreciate. I would greatly appreciate those gifts. I just want to close us with a quick prayer, a blessing for those that in this season depend mightily on God as their source and strength. This prayer is an expression of faith. It comes out of the Celtic Daily Prayer, and it's a prayer that I've prayed oftentimes. It's prayed in evening as part of the evening office. But let me close us with this expression of faith. And friends, this is an expression of my faith. And again, maybe you're someone who you have your own fundraising needs. You have your own financial or vocational needs, and you too are waiting on and praying for the Lord to deliver. I believe this prayer would be a blessing for you, and it's a prayer that I pray often. Lord, you have always given bread for the coming day, and though I am poor, today I believe. Lord, you have always given strength for the coming day, and though I am weak, today I believe. Lord, you have always given peace for the coming day, and though of anxious heart, today I believe. Lord, you have always kept me safe in trials, and now, tried as I am, today I believe. Lord, you have always marked the road for the coming day, and though it may be hidden, today I believe. Lord, you have always lightened this darkness of mine, and though the night is here, today I believe. Lord, you have always spoken when time was ripe, and though you be silent now, today I believe. Amen. Friends, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting, praying, considering, and partnering with me and Soccer Chaplains United. This has been Rev Brad coming to you from the Touchline.